Deep in the belly of Site-19, a sledgehammer smashes into SCP-173's concrete body, sending a shock of hairline cracks across the surface. It barely has time to heal before another strike, this time a fire axe, hits it. Blows come in from all sides as the violent crowd surrounds the homicidal statue. Several dead bodies already litter the ground. They're a strange bunch, the angry mob. A mix of Foundation researchers, guards, D-class personnel, and even some anomalies. SCP-106, the Old Man, SCP-076, Abel, SCP-082, Ferdinand the Cannibal, and even SCP-682, the hard-to-destroy reptile. This ragtag group all have only two things in common. They're wearing black, wide-brimmed hats, and they're all trying to destroy SCP-173. And here's the twist. By the end of this video, you're going to be on the sculpture side. We hope you're ready to get sprunked. Several hours earlier, everything seemed normal at Site-19. It's easy to picture working for the SCP Foundation as a perpetually exciting job. If you're not a field agent seeing the world and investigating the paranormal to protect humanity, you're a researcher, guard, or containment specialist, thwarting constant containment breaches from terrifying anomalies that could bring the world to its knees. But that's not the whole story. For every rockstar field agent, there's a janitor who doesn't even have the clearance to know what's going on in the building they're cleaning. For every senior researcher unraveling the secrets of the anomalous universe, there's a junior archivist transcribing decades-old magnetic tape interviews into digital text. And for every containment specialist and guard, the last line of defense against deadly containment breaches, there's a board number cruncher in the accounting department, making sure that the latest order of hydrochloric acid for 682's tank doesn't go over budget. One of these board number crunchers is Dwight Beckman, who joined the SCP Foundation with James Bond-style dreams of saving the world. But instead, he ended up working in the not-so-exciting world of the payroll department. And all things considered, it was a pretty easy job for him. Most of the time, he had a day's work complete before lunch, which then presented a different issue: how to kill the time until he clocked out. Sometimes it was office golf. Other times it was playing paper football across his desk. But most of the time it was playing old browser games, reminders of a simpler time before deadlines and taxes and student loan repayments, and waking up with back pain. It reminded him of the days when Flash still worked, and the internet was still the Wild West of Newgrounds and cool math games. But it was the game he was about to find that would truly change his life for the worse. It was the name that caught his attention first: Sprunki. It was like the sound one of Santa's elves might make after being dunked through a basketball hoop. Sprunki, like an adjective to describe something whimsical yet misshapen. Sprunki, the kind of bizarre little meme game that would spread across the internet like Ebola. And it wasn't like he had anything better to do, after all. Dwight opened up Sprunki and started to play. It was a mod of the popular Incredibox game, which Dwight hadn't played due to the fact he was in his late 30s. There was an array of whimsical characters on the screen, rendered in a charming, almost MS Paint type style. The gameplay was simple. You just needed to select from a series of hats and place them on different creatures named, be prepared to remember all these, Orin, Ratty, Clunker, Funbot, Veneria, and Gray. Then there's Brud, Garnold, OWA KCX, Sky, Mr. Sun, Derple, and Mr. Tree. Not forgetting Simon, Tanner, Mr. Fun Computer, Wenda, Pinky, Jevin, and perhaps most infamously, Black. When you placed the hat on one of the characters, they began singing a melody, and as you placed more hats, the melodies would blend to form a more complex composition. It seemed like it would be a perfect way to kill at least an hour, until he needed to find some other anodyne distraction. Little did he know, it would kill an awful lot more than an hour. At first, he was having a fun time, frittering away his afternoon on the game, until he selected the black hat and placed it on one of the Spunkies. This was opening the proverbial Ark of the Covenant, and in an instant, Dwight Beckman felt the world as he knew it melt away around him. He was no longer in a drab Site-19 office. He was in the middle of an alien vista, a dark and terrible place where no human had ever ventured before, the land of the Sprunkies. were the skies besotted with huge staring eyes. Dwight would be patient zero. A black hat manifested itself on his head, sending dark tendrils into his brain and inducing that most feared of conditions, brain rot. Now he was little more than a servant of the Sprunkies, and he would carry out their dark bidding on the mortal plane. When he was sent back to Site-19, the infection began spreading quickly. Researchers, D-classes, and even anomalies were getting sprunked and suffering from the brain rot that ensued. Any being with a brain was susceptible, and intelligence would not save you. Hence why soon the ranks of the zombified black hat-wearing horde included such figures as Dr. Gears, Dr. Clef, Ferdinand the Cannibal, Jim from Human Resources, the hard-to-destroy reptile, the Old Man, and many more. The whole facility was being overrun by a tide of black hats and rotted brains. Meanwhile, 3 D-classes were in the containment chamber of SCP-173, carrying out standard cleaning proceedings. However, when they heard the commotion outside, they made the deadly mistake of looking away and had all their necks instantaneously snapped by SCP-173. Not long after, the brain-rotted Sprunki slaves bashed their way through the door, hoping to add yet another anomaly to their ever-growing ranks. However, you cannot brain rot that which has no brain. Instead, they'd simply have to destroy it. But would the efforts of mere mortals be enough? No, the Sprunkies would have to deal with the sculpture personally. SCP-173 suddenly found itself standing in the middle of a vast plain, under dark and thunderous skies. The same place where Dwight Beckman was transported not long ago. Had it been a more thoughtful creature, it might have realized that it was no longer in its home dimension. It had instead been transported into the terrifying dimension of Sprunki, where the cartoony terrors dwelled, exercising the dark forces of brain rot through the dimensional barrier. Here they had monstrous power, and SCP-173 would need to draw on all of its strength to fight them off and save its home dimension. After all, without humans, there would be no more necks to snap, and a life without necks to snap was a life not worth living for SCP-173. Out of the primordial darkness, Orin and Ratty manifested behind 173, taking it by surprise. These were horrible, corrupted versions of the Sprunki characters we all know and love. Orin had wide, ominous eyes dripping red from the sockets. His ribs reached out like spider legs. Ratty's face was half skull, twisted into a terrible grimace. Both attacked SCP-173 simultaneously, but they made one terrible mistake. In the course of the flurry, they blinked. Immediately, 173 blipped behind Orin and Ratty and vandalized their vertebrae. With the killing blows struck, the two of them exploded into burning ash. But of course, it wasn't over yet. Sprunki still had so many horrors to dispense. Clucker rose out of the sand next, the symbol attached to his antenna flattening the top of his skull, his mouth gaping dumbly. He was about to release a powerful sonic blast from his symbol, but given that his nightmare form lacked eyes, he had already played into the ultimate power of SCP-173. Without eyes to root the sculpture in place, it appeared behind Clucker and snapped the diabolical Sprunki's neck. That seemed almost too easy, and that's because it was a trap all along. Funbot and Veneria appeared behind 173 and initiated another surprise combo attack. Veneria had become a horrifying plant-like monstrosity, her eyes sticking out on long stalks as her mouth stretched into a vacant scream. Her hair spilled out into thick, viney tendrils that wrapped around 173's body, holding it in place. Meanwhile, Funbot, whose face had become dark and sullen, released a powerful laser attack that sliced the sculpture in half in a cloud of concrete dust. But if SCP-173 was that easy to kill, someone would have already done it a long, long time ago. Obscured by the concrete dust, technically breaking the eyeline between the sculpture and its attackers, the two bisected fragments of the anomaly transformed into 2 smaller versions of SCP-173. These then teleported behind Veneria and Funbot at incredible speeds, twisting their heads 180 degrees and exploding them into inert piles of ash in the process, before fusing back into one entity. But suddenly, 173 found itself frozen in place. That meant it was being watched. And the watcher in this case was the distant, menacing Gray, a freckled cat-like creature with morose, hooded eyes. Clearly, the Sprunki squad was learning and adapting to the tactics of SCP-173, becoming familiar with ways to exploit the concrete and rebar monster that had already murdered several of them. While Gray watched from a distance, several other Sprunki monsters manifested. There was the mangled, half-faced Rudd with his single staring eye, the worn golden monster Garnold with his single staring eye, and the glowing, powerful Mr. Sun hanging up above with his single staring eye. There are lots of Sprunkis with single staring eyes, which is what we're trying to communicate here. Anyway, this time SCP-173 seemed, as the kids say, cooked, no cap. As the staring eyes of Gray rooted the sculpture in place, the rest of the Sprunkis attacked, jumping up and down on the modern art monster, the force of their attacks starting to crack stone and bend rebar. With every successive whack, the anomaly was pounded further and further into the ground below, until one of them made the terrible mistake of hammering SCP-173 fully into the ground, and at that point, it was once again out of sight, which was the worst possible thing that the Sprunki squad could possibly have done. Underground, SCP-173 started tunneling at lightning speeds, undercutting each of the assembled Sprunkis and dragging them underground. First Rudd, who found his half-face twisted at a rather fatal angle, and then Garnold, pulled beneath the other and twisted into a screaming pretzel. And before Gray could even realize what was happening, the sculpture had tunneled under him and pulled him to a nasty, crunchy demise, a little more than 6 feet under. All that was left was the unfaltering gaze of Mr. Sun, staring down at the earth, anticipating that the sculpture would surface at any moment. He needed backup, reinforcements. Even the cosmic power of the Sprunkis was insufficient to easily subdue this concrete creep, without their abilities combined, at least. And every second that Mr. Sun stared, he felt his eye growing drier, the discomfort of moisture leaching away. Any second now, no matter how hard he tried not to, he knew he would have to blink. In the half-second that the blink took place, SCP-173 vaulted out of the earth and grabbed Mr. Sun between his rebar clutches. With no neck to twist, all it could do was squeeze, until that star imposter was completely imploded in his clutches, with barely even the requisite ash remaining. But the most powerful Sprunkis were still waiting in the wings. Unluckily for them, as a non-organic beast, it wasn't like SCP-173 was capable of getting tired. Though we're definitely not talking about Mr. Tree or Simon, because the other Sprunkis didn't particularly care for them. Nobody had informed them of exactly what they were dealing with here. As such, when they showed up, Mr. Tree lacking eyes in his horror form and Simon preferring to keep his menacingly closed to accentuate his big creepy smile, they were both almost immediately massacred. SCP-173 smashed Mr. Tree into splinters and gave Simon an excellent view of his own back. Neither will be missed, even by their Sprunki allies. Next would come the greatest and deadliest invasion force yet. A terrifying combination of Durple, a horned beast with wide, haunted eyes; Tanner, a disoriented creature in a brown hat with a streak of blood dripping from his hairline; Jevon, a hooded nightmare, half-bathed in shadows; Wenda, a psychopathic wide-eyed cat monster, flecked with the blood of her previous victims; Pinky, a deranged pink rabbit girl with a torn-away face; and of course, Mr. Fun Computer, a computer monitor on a small wooden desk with a photo of a haunted human face perpetually on its screen. They had strength and numbers on their side. Durple pulled out a .44 Magnum and started peppering the sculpture with rounds. Tanner, driving his trademark Mack truck, drove into the sculpture at full force. Jevon used his mastery over the pyromatic arts to throw fireballs at SCP-173. Wenda struck the side of the concrete monster with her favorite chainsaw. Pinky threw water balloons full of turpentine at it. And Mr. Fun Computer, the most evil one of all, posted mean comments about SCP-173 online. However, it all came crashing down when Durple tried to disorient the state with a smoke bomb that he bought on CoolNinjaWeapons.com, which worked a little too well and bathed the entire battlefield in smoke. This had the horrifying unintended side effect of giving SCP-173 the advantage under the cover of smoke. SCP-173 practically danced between the Sprunkis annihilating necks and destroying spines, each one a flawless kill shot. And there was Mr. Fun Computer, who SCP-173 simply unplugged. Seems like a real design flaw for a nightmare creature. After all this, SCP-173 stood alone on the battlefield, surrounded by the errant remnants of the Sprunki army. Would this be all the dark dimension of the Sprunkis could summon up to face him? As if endeavoring to answer this very question, the ground began to shake beneath the nubby concrete feet of SCP-173. The ground parted and unleashed a figure of terrible magnitude, black, a huge monstrosity with a photorealistic, duotone human face buried in the darkness of his body. He was older than time and more magnificent and terrible than God, a creature of such absolute evil that your mind would choke while trying to process the implications of its existence, a stupefying stain on the multiverse itself, made of pure malice packed denser than dark matter. And you know the craziest part of all? SCP-173 killed him, too. Now check out evil SCP-914 furry transformations more terrifying than SCP-173, or old SCP-173 versus new SCP-173, ultimate design mistake, for more.